So, Stranger Things 4 Volume 2 just wrapped up, and damn it. Seriously, damn it. Because, well, let me just preface this. I'm about to get into some major spoilers, so if you for some reason haven't watched this yet, well, do it. But I'm mourning over here, guys, because our favorite, our one and only, Eddie Munson died. I will state that Eddie's death was a necessity in the advancement of Dustin's character. Despite that, it still hurts real bad that he's gone. For the most part, I believe Eddie's death works, although I would have liked a little more of him in the next season. That being said, I do have criticisms involving the aftermath of Eddie's death, which I will get to by the end of this video. So, we'll get to that in a bit, but right now, I'm going to explain Eddie's entire arc throughout the entirety of Season 4 and why it was actually, really good, but I think just needed that extra push at the end to make it truly fantastic.
Music! We need music! This is music!
So when we start off with Eddie in episode 1 of season 4, we see him as a leader, and his introduction in general was just as charismatic as it probably could have been. Portrayed by the actor Joseph Quinn, he does a fantastic job enthralling the viewer straight into his character. Like, I have to admit, it took me a couple days to get around to watching season 4 when it first came out, and I kept hearing things about this Eddie character, and I wasn't really super hyped about it. And being the person who was once sick of Stranger Things, I was kind of just unsure about it all. I thought this character was going to be overhyped, but I was proven wrong because I'm stupid and dumb, and an idiot. Which is why you should subscribe to Zeepsterd, because I'm a dummy, but it's kind of funny, so The entire premise of Eddie is one of nonconformity, being hated by those around him, but being absolutely loved by those who took the time to understand him. Thus, the cafeteria scene in which he's hopping around and referring to various cliques, leading to a perfect introduction of him.
You want something, freak?
Being the head of the Hellfire Club, he took his devotion to Dungeons & Dragons incredibly seriously. I mean, why not? Dungeons & Dragons some serious shit, so I get it. It's no wonder he prided it over actual school. Because for years he struggled to graduate high school. And let me make this clear, it was not because he was dumb per se, because he wasn't. It's just that he had other stuff going on, being the unconventional character that he was. But even despite all of this, he was still determined to graduate high school in 1986. Being knowledgeable of many things, he was also known as the drug guy. So much so that Chrissy came to him after experiencing the various Vecna-isms. An interesting but yet wonderful dynamic between, the unconventional weirdo and the popular chick. It's not to say that we haven't seen this interaction before, but it's also to say that the Stranger Things writers managed to make this duo incredibly engaging, even with their short time period together. I'm not exaggerating, the chemistry here was fantastic.
You're not what I thought you'd be like.
Mean and scary? Yeah, well,
I actually kind of thought you'd be kind of mean and scary too. Terrifying.
So much so that the writers of Stranger Things kind of regret killing Chrissy off so early. It's kind of a shame, really, because the last traumatic scene between Chrissy and Eddie is kind of a meme now because of this TikTok song.
Chrissy, wake up! I don't like this!
This is a pretty serious scene, so now every time I rewatch it, I can't help but think about that stupid but yet also really funny song. For the rest of the show, Eddie is seen running away and being scared of everything around him, which is totally understandable because what he just saw would horrify anyone. The unfortunate tragedy of the character is that most of Hawkins believes him to be a murderer, as well as a ringleader of a satanic cult. The only ones who really understand him are those within his circle. They would know that he would never do this. On the other side of the coin, we also see Eddie grow as a character as well, when it comes to him characterizing people who are popular, such as Chrissy or even Steve Harrington.
Harrington's got her. Don't you, big boy?
It is a belief that there is more under someone's skin, rather than just being that stereotypical character once perceived just at a glance. Which I think Stranger Things does really, really well. With Steve Harrington, at the beginning of the show we're supposed to hate him, but by the end of the first season, we really like him. One of the best things about Season 2 is that Steve Harrington is more fleshed out rather than just staying as that typical bullyish, popular kid. It's funny because at the beginning of Season 4, Eddie thinks the same way we did about Steve in the past. Or say how we would have perceived Chrissy if we were in his shoes. It's funny because we're eventually greeted with the antithesis of Eddie, Jason Carver. Okay, so I understand some people really do not like the inclusion of Jason Carver. A decent chunk of people think the plotline is boring and adds way too much time in these already really long episodes, which in aspects I do kind of agree. I do think some of these episodes run for a little too long, but hey, I would argue the extra content is mostly justified. I believe Jason Carver's inclusion is mostly good. He's a rich athlete who automatically assumes without asking too many questions. To be fair, he is put in situations in where he could automatically perceive Eddie to be that, you know, a murderer, but refuses to get a proper explanation from Eddie because he's already made up his mind. He is a very quick-tempered individual, who perceives everything surrounding the Hellfire Club as satanic and, you know, cult-related. His entire being is warped by his own self-centered ideas. He refuses any other explanation besides the one he made up in his own mind. He refers to the Hellfire Club as a bunch of creeps. He thinks Chrissy was this perfect individual who would never do drugs. He, you know, is just an asshole. And personally, I think that's great. I think he has more character than any stereotypical popular athletic kid that we usually see in high school related media. The thing that makes Eddie's character so great is that he's like perceived as this huge rebel at first, but he really has this big sensitive side. Once again, he's the antithesis of Jason Carver. While Eddie is able to understand and eventually learn, Jason Carver is very narrow-minded. Finally, I would like to talk about the final few episodes Eddie appears in. You know, after running around and being scared about everything around him, Eddie decides to do something brave. In one of his final interactions with Dustin, he's able to show his goofy side one more time. With Steve no longer attending Hawkins High, Dustin needed that parental figure to survive high school. Not only that, but I do believe Eddie sees himself within Dustin, as Dustin, displayed throughout the entirety of the series, is never afraid to be himself. Even Joseph Quinn, the actor for Eddie, goes as far to agree with this statement.
I think he probably recognises a bit of himself in it, and he's also Dustin is very funny, and he's very himself, and I think anyone that is just kind of Dustin doesn't pretend to be anything other than who he is, so I think Eddie finds that kind of quite charming.
In trying to rescue the ones around him who are in danger, Eddie is able to be brave and finally fight back instead of running away. Throughout the entire season, he's been running around trying to avoid the fray, but in this instance, he decides to be right in the heat of it, surrounded by the Demobats. Let me just say something real quick. So this scene where, Eddie goes up there, he's playing his guitar, mad shredding, this is one of the most awesome scenes I've ever seen. I know I just said scene 70 times, but I'm just being honest here, I'm just being real with you guys. There's also this weird debate going on, involving this scene, people gatekeeping Metallica, just oh, if you only found out about this song because of Stranger Things, you are not a real fan. And to that I say, shut up. Who really cares at the end of the day? I mean, this scene is still golden, whether or not you already know what this song is. Another interesting thing that I'd like to point out is that in the timeline, the song Master of Puppets didn't come out until a couple weeks earlier, in early March of 1986, and this scene takes place at the end of March of 86. So Eddie over here only had a short time to learn and really perfect this song. Either that or he just knows music by ear, which is also twice as impressive. I mean, it makes sense because one of the funniest scenes from this show is this short interaction.
Music! We need music! This is music!
So Eddie Munson's death scene is really heartbreaking, stating that he didn't run away this time. And the fact that Dustin is holding him in his arms while he's passing away, God, it's really crushing.
I didn't run away this time, right?
No. You didn't run.
From the very beginning of the season all the way until the end of the season, he was himself, which I think was the beauty of his character. He never tried to pretend he was something he wasn't, instead he grew as a person, living life on his own terms rather than, letting pressure from above affect who he was. In this way, I don't have any issues when it comes to Eddie's death itself. I completely understand why it happened because it just makes sense. What awaits Eddie back home is being the primary suspect for a murder case, and an entire town hating on him. Ironic because Eddie sacrificed himself for Hawkins. But also another beauty about Eddie's death is that he was smiling through all the pain. A goofy smile atoned to our introduction to him. It is unfair in a way because Eddie was a genuinely good person, one subject to all the evil surrounding him. In that way, I do believe Eddie Munson deserved so much better, and that is the heartbreaking aspect of this all. In treating others with kindness and dignity, and in sacrificing himself, Eddie Munson will forever be etched as an evil man to a town that will never receive the full truth. In this case, I do have one criticism surrounding the death of Eddie, which I will touch on briefly. So the 2 days later thing is kind of like a smack in the face, maybe if they like, spaced it out a little more, but like the main cast of characters that we have don't really acknowledge the death of Eddie. The only ones who acknowledge Eddie's death is, of course, Eddie's uncle and Dustin, and not even Mike says anything about it. It's just weird in a way. And, I get it, they didn't have as much of a close relationship to Eddie as, say, Dustin, and I do understand, there's a lot of more pressing matters to attend to, like other people died as well. The entire town is destroyed. The fate of Max is basically uncertain at this point, but I do find it weird that most of the characters just don't acknowledge that Eddie is dead. They're just like, okay, damn, that sucks, time to move on. Which does make the death a little more tragic, with it being buried under everything else. And it is season 4, maybe they're used to this, but it's still kind of weird to me. That being said, I do really like the scene in which Eddie's uncle was told the truth about Eddie's demise. In a town full of cover-ups, Dustin is able to reveal the slight truth about what happened to Eddie, providing closure to his uncle. In the end, Eddie's death was inevitable, and even worse, he was even more outcasted from the entirety of society. He truly believed that the class of 1986 would be his year. And although he was unable to walk the stage and grab his diploma, 1986 truly was his year. Although his time in the show may have been brief, he himself was one of the biggest highlights of the entirety of the series. As I wrap up this video, it occurred to me that I also have other characters to be worried about as we enter the final season of Stranger Things. Dear God, if Steve dies, it will literally be over. It's actually gonna be over. Okay, love you guys, like, comment, subscribe, bye!